Hi Year 10, so here we are, Lesson 7 in Macbeth, Year 10 English Literature. Right, today we are looking at another kind of important little scene. We're going to focusing today on the character of King Duncan and how he comes across in the opening stages of this play. So, step one in our objective today is to continue to develop knowledge of events in the plot, so just keep learning about how the story just starts to get how it starts to build up and how certain things happen that might have bigger consequences later on. We're going to focus on a key moment in the play, so that's going to be in Act 1, Scene 4. And we're going to focus our attention on the leadership skills of King Duncan, so we can see what kind of leader he is. So before we start the actual reading of the scene, just remind ourselves what's happened before the scene starts. Well, Scene 1, the witches are planned to meet Macbeth. Scene 2, the Scotland army has defeated the two invading armies thanks to Macbeth and Banquo's fighting skills. King Duncan plans to execute the Thane of Cawdor because he's been a traitor. Macbeth is going to become the new Thane of Cawdor. Scene 3, Macbeth and Banquo meet the witches. They are told their prophecies. Then Macbeth is informed that he is the Thane of Cawdor, which disturbs him and he thinks dreadful things because obviously that means that the next prophecy about becoming king, he thinks, how is that going to happen? So the scene we're going to be looking at in Act 1, Scene 4, this is what happens in that scene. So Duncan is told that the old Thane of Cawdor has been executed. Macbeth and Duncan arrive. They receive praise from the king. The third part of the scene, Duncan announces that Malcolm will be the heir to the throne. Macbeth has got some evil thoughts in reaction to this. And then number 4, Duncan announces he's going to visit Macbeth's castle. Macbeth leaves slightly ahead of the others so he can get to the castle first and let his wife know about the king's visit. We've got here a script of Macbeth, and as you can see on the left-hand side of the page on the screen, you've got the original Shakespeare. On the right-hand side, you have a modern English translation, and they run side by side so you can easily see what the Shakespearean language means. Hopefully, this will make things a bit easier for you to understand. Okay, so let's start ourselves off. Act 1, Scene 4. And as you can see, we start with a flourish. Enter King Duncan, Lennox, Malcolm, Donalbain, plus other attendants. So the king enters the stage surrounded by some of his nearest and dearest thanes. Malcolm and Donalbain are his sons. Okay, that pink. The screen's going to scroll. Bits of pink on it, all bits of ink on it. So let's see what Duncan has to say. Is execution done on Cawdor? Are not those in commission yet returned? Malcolm says, My liege, they are not yet come back, but I spoke with one that saw him die, who did report that very frankly he confessed his treasons, implored your highness pardon, and set forth a deep repentance. Nothing in his life became him like believing it. He died as one that had been studied in his death, to throw away the dearest thing he owed, as 'twere a careless trifle. Duncan says, There's no art to find the mind's construction in the face. He was a gentleman on whom I built an absolute trust. So, that first part of this scene, we see Duncan basically saying to Malcolm, his son, that there was no way of him knowing that the Thane of Cawdor was going to be such a devious traitor. He says, I built an absolute trust on him. So just that image of him having a really secure, solid belief that Cawdor was a good, honest, supportive Thane, only for it to be revealed that he was a treacherous, kind of stab him in the back kind of character. What's ironic is that Duncan has got rid of one Thane of Cawdor who was a traitor, and he's given that title to Macbeth. And Macbeth is also going to become a traitor in the near future. So Duncan is very unlucky when it comes to his Thanes of Cawdor, because they just seem to be traitors. It might suggest that Duncan's a little bit too trusting. Maybe he doesn't learn from his mistakes, or perhaps that these traitors are really good at hiding their kind of devious, evil plans. Let's move on. Enter Macbeth, Banquo, Ross, and Angus. This is still Duncan talking to Macbeth. O worthiest cousin, the sin of my ingratitude, even now, was heavy on me. Thou art so far before the swiftest wing of recompense is slow to overtake thee. Would thou hadst less deserved, that the proportion both of thanks and payment might have been mine. Only I have left to say, more is thy due than more than all can pay. So a very uh, glowing uh, comment there from the king to Macbeth, basically praising Macbeth massively, saying that he deserves so much kind of reward, huge rewards, payments, whatever it might be. But Duncan says you're owed so much more than anyone, more than all of us can pay. So basically just saying, I just owe you massively. I can't repay you for what you've done for me. It's a really nice, generous way of saying thank you to Macbeth. Macbeth responds with, the service and the loyalty I owe in doing it pays itself. Your Highness's part is to receive our duties, and our duties are to your throne and state children and servants, which do but what they should by doing everything safe towards your love and honour. So Beth replies in a kind of really noble, kind way, suggesting that he's a genuine servant to the king. Duncan continues, welcome hither. I have begun to plant thee, and will labour to make thee full of growing. We'll look at that quote in more detail later in the lesson. To Banquo, noble Banquo, thou hast no less deserved, nor must be known to let to, nor must be known no less to have done so. Let me enfold thee and hold thee to my heart. Banquo says, there, if I grow, the harvest is your own. Duncan, my plenteous joys, wanton in fullness, seek to hide themselves in drops of sorrow. He starts to cry with joy, that's what that means. Sons, kinsmen, thanes, and you whose places are the nearest, know we will establish our estate upon our eldest, Malcolm, whom we name hereafter the Prince of Cumberland, which honour must not unaccompanied invest him only, but signs of nobleness like stars shall shine on all deservers. Speaking directly to Macbeth now, from hence to Inverness, and bind us further to you. Inverness, by the way, is where Macbeth's castle is. Macbeth says, the rest is labour which is not used for you. I'll be myself the harbinger, and make joyful the hearing of my wife with your approach. So humbly take my leave. Duncan, my worthy Cawdor. Macbeth, an aside. Remember, these are speeches that the audience can hear, but no one else on stage can. The Prince of Cumberland. That is a step on which I must fall down, or else overleap, but in my way it lies. Stars, hide your fires, let not light see my black and deep desires. The eye wink at the hand, yet let that be which the eye fears when it is done to see. Macbeth exits. Duncan says, true, worthy Banquo, he is so valiant, and in his commendations I am fed. It's a banquet to me. Let's after him, whose care is gone before to bid us welcome. It is a peerless kinsman. So that little scene just demonstrates how much Duncan trusts Macbeth. He's full of praise for him. He's uh, happy to go and stay in Macbeth's castle. He thinks he is the uh, best of his family. So, in a way, the question is, if Macbeth is just so great and so wonderful, why does Duncan choose his son Malcolm to become king? In the system that Shakespeare set this play, it appears that the Scottish kings are able to choose who will follow them. It's not a matter of it passes from father to son. Here, Duncan had a choice, and what he's saying in his words is that Macbeth is an exceptional member of the court, an exceptional person who would be a great, who Duncan thinks is great, but yet he gives the role of the heir to his son. So there's a slight contradiction there. We don't know what makes Malcolm so special, other than he happens to be Duncan's son. Macbeth in this scene sounds like a perfect candidate to be heir to the throne. So now you've read the scene and had some of the lines explained to you, hopefully it's a bit more understandable and you're a bit more confident with it. We're now going to watch a clip from a film version of Macbeth where we actually watch that exact same scene we've just read, but being acted out by some pretty decent actors. Okay, so when I move on to the next slide, it should start automatically.
Is execution done on Cawdor? Are not those in commission yet returned?
My liege, they are not yet come back. But I spoke with one who saw him die, but did report that very frankly he confessed his treasons, implored your highness' pardon, and set forth a deep repentance. Nothing in his life became him like the leaving it. He died as one that had been studied in his death. To throw away the dearest thing he owed as 'twere a careless trifle.
There's no art to find the mind's construction in the face. He was a gentleman on whom I built an absolute trust. O worthiest cousin, the sin of my ingratitude even now was heavy on me. Would thou hadst less deserved, that the proportion both of thanks and payment might have been mine. Only I have left to say, more is thy due than more than all can pay.
The service and the loyalty I owe in doing it pays itself. Your Highness' part is to receive our duties, and our duties are to your throne and state, children and servants, which do but what they should, by doing everything safe toward your love and honor.
Welcome hither. I have begun to plant thee, and will labor to make thee full of growing. Noble Banquo, that hast no less deserved, nor must be known no less to have done so. Let me enfold thee and hold thee to my heart.
There, if I grow, the harvest is your own.
My plenteous joys, wanton in fullness, seek to hide themselves in drops of sorrow. Sons, kinsmen, thanes, and you whose places are the nearest, know, we will establish our estate upon our eldest, Malcolm, whom we name hereafter the Prince of Cumberland, which honor must not, unaccompanied, invest him only, but signs of nobleness, like stars, shall shine on all deservers, from hence to Glamis, and bind us further to you.
I'll be myself the harbinger, and make joyful the hearing of my wife with your approach. Humbly take my leave.
My worthy Cawdor.
The Prince of Cumberland. That is a step on which I must fall down. Or else, or leap. For in my way it lies. Stars, hide your fires. Let not light see my black and deep desires.
So, what we're going to do now we've seen the scene and we've read the scene, we're now going to focus on King Duncan's character. And on the slide here, I've got kind of a mind map focusing on King Duncan's leadership skills in the middle there. And there are 4 areas I want us to focus on during the next part of the lesson. And your task really is to basically copy this mind map, and as we go around each segment of it, add the notes to your mind map so you've got a complete set of notes to revise from or to refer back to in the future. Okay, so it doesn't have to look exactly like mine, but the idea is hopefully similar. So King Duncan's leadership skills in the middle, with 4 clear focus areas we're going to look at in turn. We're going to start with the green one, and then we'll go around. Okay, so hands-on man management, that's what we're going to look at first. And what I mean by hands-on man management is that Duncan shows he can manage different people in different ways. He appeals to their motivations. Okay, so he's able to work out what each, whoever is leading, what they want out of life, what motivates them, and he can use that to kind of get them to do kind of what he wants or to be loyal to him. So there's 2 characters that he really demonstrates that skill with. The first one is Macbeth. So we're going to look at him first. So how does Duncan show his leadership skills of Macbeth? Well, this is the quote that Duncan says, and you need to copy this down onto your mind map. I have begun to plant thee, and will labour to make thee full of growing. Okay, which basically means that Duncan is saying that, look, to Macbeth, look, I have put you somewhere. I've planted you, and I'm going to work hard to make sure that you grow, that you get bigger, that you have more status, more power, more wealth, more land, whatever it might be. Duncan is saying to Macbeth, look, I've planted you, and I'm going to basically nurture you and help you grow. And what that quote shows is that Duncan is able to appeal to Macbeth's sense of ambition. That's a really important part of Macbeth's character. Okay? Because Macbeth's ambition is what's known as his fatal flaw. It's the weakness in his personality that leads to his downfall. So Duncan can see in Macbeth that ambition is something that makes Macbeth do things. So he uses a kind of ambitious kind of image of, I'm going to help you get bigger, to kind of make Macbeth stay loyal to him. When we look at how he speaks to Banquo on the other side of the slide, the way he speaks to Banquo is very different. He says to Banquo, let me enfold thee and hold thee to my heart. So no promises of a kind of promotion or bonuses. He just says, let me put my arms around you and give you a big hug. And that kind of language shows that Duncan is appealing to Banquo's sense of loyalty. And that's an important difference here between the 2 characters, between Macbeth and Banquo. What Shakespeare wants, what Shakespeare wants the audience to see, that these 2 characters, Macbeth and Banquo, have both been influenced by the witches, but they react to that situation in very different ways. Macbeth goes on a killing spree, and Banquo kind of does nothing and and as we remember him saying, he kind of doesn't trust the witches, he thinks that they're evil. So what does that quote say about Duncan's leadership skills? Well, it shows the audience that Banquo is a noble character and not selfish. And Duncan can see that, and all he needs to do to get Banquo to stay being loyal to him, is to show him that he loves him. So Duncan demonstrates good hands-on man management there. He treats these 2 men differently in a way that appeals to their own kind of motivations. So that's the green segment done. Moving forward now to the blue, onto the yellow. So nepotism. Well, first of all, what is nepotism? Well, nepotism is when Duncan shows he prefers to promote his family members rather than other potential candidates. So as we said in the read through, Duncan has the choice in this scene. He could choose Malcolm to be the heir to the throne, or he could choose someone else who is, suitable for that particular responsibility. And what Duncan does is he chooses his son. Okay, he says, "We will establish estate upon our eldest Malcolm, whom we name hereafter the Prince of Cumberland. So that's the quote. Now, what's really interesting in that quote, I've put it on here. When Duncan announces the decision, he uses the pronoun we. Okay, and that's a really clever use of language there, because it makes his decision seem to have been made by everyone in the room, and this will make the others more likely to agree with the decision. So Duncan's promoting his son to be the next most important person in Scotland, but the way he pronounces it to everyone there, he makes it sound like they've made the decision. So it's a clever bit of persuasive language there to make sure the other Thanes accept Duncan's decision. Onto the blue segment. This is now honest and open. Duncan shows his emotions, which means he's not afraid to share his feelings. Okay? He said the example is that he cries as he is so happy that Scotland's wars are over. He says, "My plenteous joys want them in fullness to seek to hide themselves in drops of sorrow." Basically, that means that he explains his feelings and why he's crying very openly to everyone. He's so happy, his plenteous joys, so happy, so full that they are hiding themselves in his tears. So he's crying because he's so happy. The openness and honesty regarding his feelings means that his Thanes will trust him and be more loyal as a result. And what we see here is a king who is so open and honest with the people around him that he's surrounded by these very strong, these very kind of macho warrior men, and he's able to cry in front of them. And that honest and openness is something that kind of makes King Duncan a very popular king. And later in the play, when we see King Macbeth is very the opposite. He is deceitful. He is secretive. He doesn't show people his feelings. He kind of hides things away from the people around him. So this version of king behaviour in Duncan is shown to be very positive, and it just sets a nice precedent. So when we see Macbeth later in the play, he looks like a really awful king in comparison to King Duncan. Finally, onto the red segment. King Duncan is shown to be positive and fair. So the point here is that Duncan is keen to reward his Thanes for their individual efforts in the recent battles. Okay, obviously he's promoted Malcolm, but he wants to make sure everyone else gets some share too. So he announces, he says, signs of nobleness, meaning all the other nobles, all the other members of the aristocracy, like stars, shall shine on all deservers. So basically he's going to say, look, I'm going to reward everyone who deserves it. I'm going to put a bit of stardust on you and reward you with something. He doesn't know any details, but there's a definite sense he's going to reward people. He uses positive language in that quote and a simile to show that he will reward others. Okay, so he's kind of trying to make it sound really, really positive. And it's that positivity and the fairness that will encourage the Thanes to maintain their loyalty and love for their king. So that's where we are here, year 10. So we've looked at King Duncan's leadership skills. Now we started a spider diagram or mind map. You're going to finish that off for the rest of the lesson, and then you're going to keep that somewhere safe so you can refer back to it later on when we start when we kind of look at a comparison between how King Duncan does his king role and how King Macbeth does his king role. But we'll be looking at that in a few weeks' time once we get to that part of the play. So yeah, so that's the end of this lesson. So hopefully that's all made sense. If anything you need to go back and watch it again, absolutely fine. Do that. Pause it so you can get all the information that you need. And good luck with the work. Any problems, please send me an email or post a comment on Google Classroom, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Take care, guys.